The beginning of the 1980s from the perspective of action figures can be defined a few different ways. You could argue that Kenner kicked off the action figure craze in 1977 with Star Wars, which remained undeniably strong in 1980 with The Empire Strikes Back. However, the 1980s is also defined as the era of the toy line with the tie-in cartoon. By that definition, Masters of the Universe and G.I. Joe's Real American Hero in 1982 could be seen as the beginning of the 80s era of toys. They precede their own cartoon adaptations by a full year, due to legislation deregulating children's television, which passed in 1983 that allowed for toys to be based on cartoons. So the beginning of 80s toys is debatable, but there's no debating the toy line that took us out of the 1980s. Towards the end of the decade, the marketing machine that synchronized cartoons, toys, home video, and video games had become a finely tuned monster. In late 1987, this machine delivered an explosion no one, including the toy makers, saw coming. That only stands to reason, though. You never see ninjas until they've taken you out. And in this case, these four ninjas knocked the whole world for a loop.
This is not a toy.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles became a household name in 1987 and continued on well into the 1990s. It was the last major cartoon phenomenon for Generation X, and the first cartoon phenomenon for millennials. But it all started in 1984. The early 1980s moved away from the kung fu craze of the 1970s, made famous by Bruce Lee and David Carradine. In 1980, Chuck Norris made the ninja action film The Octagon. In 1981, ninjutsu master Sho Kosugi and film producers Golan Globus gave us Enter the Ninja, a low-budget ninja film that became a surprise hit. Kosugi would follow that with Revenge of the Ninja in 1983 and Ninja 3: The Domination in 1984. By 1984, ninjas were huge. Remco got in on this action with their own Secret of the Ninja action figure line. Satirizing this whole craze were two struggling comic artists, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. Eastman got bored one night at their studio and drew a turtle holding ninja weapons. A one-upsmanship contest ensued, and they started trying to better each other's drawings. They were poking fun at the ninja fad, but soon realized they had a real concept on their hands. So they self-published Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1 with a print run of only 3,000 copies. It was a black and white comic book, it was gritty, it was violent, it was about mutant turtles, and it sold out. There was a lot of edge to this original story, a lot of blood, slashing, and martial arts violence. You'll notice no colored headbands or lettered belts. Their only differentiators were their weapons. There was no cowabunga, there was no pizza. Then, in 1987, Playmates Toys acquired the license to make Ninja Turtles toys. They liked the comic and felt they could adapt it for kids. Playmates partnered with Fred Wolf Animation to create the initial cartoon miniseries of 5 episodes, created for the sole purpose of selling the toys. The toys sold out, the cartoon was a hit. But would you believe that Playmates wasn't interested in making more episodes? Fred Wolf had to do that himself. What Playmates predicted would only last 3 years soldiered on for almost a decade. The original cartoon wouldn't stop until 1996. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is one of the few cartoons from the 1980s that I can remember specific lines, scenes, and plots from. As I've said in previous videos, a lot of the cartoons I watched from back in the 80s, I can only remember the intro theme. And it wasn't until DVD that I was able to lift that fog from my memory and see the episodes again. But the home video landscape by the time Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came out was very different. Until the latter half of the 1980s, video cassette releases of cartoons were sporadic and usually only available as rentals. Plus, you never knew if you could rent it. Transformers episodes were available on VHS at the rental store near my house. However, all of the Masters of the Universe episodes were on Betamax, so I wasn't able to rewatch any of those. Even if they were available for purchase, they were usually so expensive, your parents just laughed at you and walked away. Movies would eventually be available to own, but often quite some time after rental stores had them. For example, Return of the Jedi finally being available to own was a big deal in 1986. By the time Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arrived, the VHS home video market was far more established, and for the first time in my house, my parents bought the VHS episodes of the Turtles for my brother. That allowed for repeat viewing and familiarity. By this point, they were even giving video cassettes away at Burger King. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles launched as a 5-part miniseries that follows Maverick TV reporter April O'Neil as she investigates the organized ninja thieves of New York called the Foot Clan. When she gets too close for comfort, she is rescued by 4 mutant turtles in the sewer system. She learns from their mutant rat sensei Splinter that they were the result of an accident involving a broken canister of radioactive mutagen. Hamato Yoshi was exposed to the ooze as well, turning him into a giant rat. The original comic book origin of the Turtles was a big wink to the origins of Daredevil. Eastman and Laird envisioned the origin of the Turtles as what happens just off-screen after Daredevil was hit by that truck full of radioactive canisters. In a kind of meta-continuity, that canister then bounced off Daredevil's face into the fishbowl of turtles, shattering it and sending the ooze and the reptiles into the sewer. And just as Daredevil was trained by Stick and fights the hand ninjas, the Turtles were trained by Splinter and fight the foot ninjas. It's a whole thing. Aside from that, though, the comic and the cartoon diverge and never come back to one another. In the original comic, Splinter is not Hamato Yoshi. Rather, he is Yoshi's pet rat and flees after rival ninja Oroku Saki murders Yoshi to avenge the death of his brother Nagi. In the cartoon, Saki frames Yoshi for attempted murder, and Yoshi is banished from his ninja clan, where he lives penniless in the sewers and is hit with the mutagen. In the comic, April O'Neil is a lab assistant for Mouser inventor Baxter Stockman, and she doesn't show up until the second issue. In the cartoon, she's a TV reporter, and she still holds the record for being one of the most buxom women in a kid's cartoon.
Who, me?
Where the cartoon really goes wild is with the villain, Oroku Saki, better known as Shredder. In the original comic, he dies at the end of the first issue. In the cartoon, Shredder's in a completely different situation. In the years since his frame job on Yoshi, he's made friends with a disembodied brain from Dimension X named Krang, and through his own genius, replaced all of his ninjas with robotic soldiers. He's also attempted to kill Yoshi by dumping mutagen into the sewers of New York, but inadvertently created the Ninja Turtles as a result. Now, he and Krang play Frankenstein from their massive underground lair, the Technodrome, creating mutant minions like Bebop and Rocksteady from hapless street punks to help Shredder destroy the Turtles. It's a little disturbing watching Shredder dupe these thugs into the experiment, knowing he's going to ruin their lives. The miniseries also introduces us to the cartoon version of Baxter Stockman, now a penniless inventor of the Mouser robots, and mysteriously white. The original Stockman was not white. I can only surmise they didn't want to make a minority a subservient crony to the main villain. Where the original Stockman was a raving lunatic, the cartoon Stockman is surprisingly a tragic character, but more on that in a minute. The cartoon also establishes April's co-workers at Channel 6 and her lonely-in-love friend Irma, who become frequent supporting characters in the series. The strongest episodes of the show are the first 5. In the opening miniseries, we're shown the scope of the Turtles universe, and we're treated to the best action and animation the series has to offer. All of the Turtles have distinct personalities. Leonardo is the leader, no nonsense.
You'll be pushing up daisies if we don't improve our jungle fighting techniques.
Man, Leonardo, you are such a downer.
Donatello is the smart one, always coming up with the gadgets.
I've got it. Whatever it is.
It's a tracking device. I put it together out of circuits I got from the alien ship.
Michelangelo is the funny one, the carefree pizza-eating surfer dude.
Check this out.
But Raphael is downright hilarious at times with his sarcastic one-liners.
Hey, I got it! She stays here with us for the rest of her life.
Try again, Mr. Wizard.
Where are these guys getting their gear? Mars?
There is no way out.
Well, that's kind of a defeatist attitude, don't you think?
Excellent strategy, Raphael.
Thank you, Sensei. I've always been great against household appliances.
It's also a unique depiction of the Rebel Turtle, because he's not a Bronx-accented bruiser with a chip on his shoulder, as he's so often depicted in newer incarnations. Rather, he's confident and snarky, but still part of the team. This is also when the danger and cunning of the Shredder is at its peak. In subsequent seasons of the series, the Shredder's character is increasingly pushed towards buffoonery, and Krang right along with him. At first, Krang is a reluctant ally of the Shredder, and we know that Krang must act carefully if he is to succeed in coercing Shredder to build him the android body he demands, before Shredder realizes he can just betray him. In the earliest episodes, even right after the miniseries, it's hard to overemphasize how ruthless Shredder and Krang are written. Shredder has no trouble trouncing all of the Turtles in combat. They don't stand a chance. Behind the scenes, Krang is orchestrating a takeover of Earth by re-establishing contact with his Rock Warrior army, who we learn have enslaved and decimated the alien race known as the Neutrinos. And I have to say, the Neutrinos are obnoxious characters.
We didn't think you cats knew how to have fun!
Yeah, we thought this was a Planet of the Squares, man!
The writers on this show took some serious risks that you have to salute. In one episode, Baxter Stockman has failed to defeat the Turtles for the umpteenth time, and so Shredder sends him back to Dimension X in a swap for Bebop and Rocksteady. The poor scientist is summarily seized by Krang's soldiers and tossed into a disintegration chamber. Yep, he's worthless, so they're gonna kill him. But a random accident with a fly in the chamber turns Baxter Stockman into a mutant fly guy. An angry mutant fly guy. Yeah, we've seen this plot before. As he makes his escape, he ruthlessly guns down 2 of Krang's soldiers. I'm not saying the killings were unwarranted. Far from. What I'm saying is that it's shocking to see that in a 1980s cartoon. I'm sure they couched it as the Rock guys being like robots, soulless and expendable. But the Rock guys have dialogue and emotions. They're established as a sentient race. So yeah, he totally killed those guys. Tonight on Dateline. 20 years ago, Baxter Stockman escaped incarceration in Dimension X. For the past 2 decades, Dimension X's embassy has made numerous attempts to extradite him to stand trial for the murder of 2 soldiers. Stockman claims they attempted to execute him and turned him into the human fly he is today.
I was held against my will. It was self-defense.
Those were good men. They had families. They were just doing their duty.
Stockman claims he was taken to Dimension X by force. Lies! All lies! So far, the US government has blocked extradition, citing breaches of the Geneva Convention, including torture and execution without trial. But Dimension X ambassadors say they're overreaching.
Geneva Convention? This is Dimension X. There is no Geneva Convention.
Tonight, Dateline will speak for the first time with a local reporter who attempted to unravel the mystery.
Every time I got close to the truth, the story all too conveniently fell apart.
As well as the Good Samaritans who tried to help O'Neill get to the truth. I don't know, dude. We totally weren't there when it happened. Tonight on Dateline. Despite some choice moments like these outside the excellent opening miniseries, the show at large goes downhill in a few directions. The tone of the show, which was already generally light, starts to descend toward a very young audience, somewhere just above toddlers. As early as the 2nd season, you have scenarios like Irma dating a fully robotic cop.
My job is to serve and protect. And take Irma to the movies.
He's such a quick learner.
Mutant frogs.
Master Shredder says we have to steal a list of chemicals from here. Isn't stealing bad?
And a mutant cat April O'Neil.
April, what's come over you?
More than any other cartoon I can think of, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles plays by its own set of rules, all in spite of the fact that it's set on present-day Earth in a major city. In this reality, a coat and hat are an adequate disguise for human-sized mutant reptiles without anyone noticing, Despite living in a sewer, the Turtles apparently have the money and resources to maintain and fuel a high-tech battle van, and I guess they have a safe place to park it as well. They can even operate a full-size blimp in broad daylight without arousing any suspicions whatsoever. The quality of the animation also takes a hit. This is understandable to a degree because Fred Wolf had to produce more episodes in the same period of time. However, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles faces a unique production challenge that they were never able to correct throughout the life of the series. All 4 main characters are very similar, so quite often the Turtles would have the wrong headband colors, or the voice of one turtle would emanate from the face of another.
You said a mouthful.
But the general animation quality overall does degrade after the miniseries, becoming far more simplistic and caricatured. Then there was the problem with international markets. In Britain, for example, the word ninja was not allowed in children's programming, and nunchucks in particular were banned at the time. I remember when we moved to England in the summer of 1990, the Turtles were hugely popular there, but they were called Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, and Michelangelo's fighting scenes were cut out entirely, often replaced with Mikey using a chain weapon and hook. Later on in the series, Fred Wolf became understandably tired of dealing with multiple edits for the same production, and so Michelangelo's nunchucks quietly disappeared from the US version as well. Attempts were made in the last 3 seasons to update the series with more refined animation and darker, more action-focused shows. April lost her yellow jumpsuit, the Turtles found an ally in a mutated human named Carter, and the main villains were no longer Shredder and Krang, but an evil alien conqueror named Lord Dreg. The series even incorporated footage from the original live-action film into the opening sequence to tie the cartoon to the cinema adventures. Despite staying on another 3 years after that, the original Turtles had finally lost their luster and tapped out in 1996. The 1987 Ninja Turtles cartoon was a massive success, and there's no denying that it is directly responsible for an entire generation of kids being introduced to the characters created by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. Laird has expressed misgivings about what the cartoon did to the public perception of the Turtles, and I can understand his regrets creatively, but this cartoon served as the conduit to get kids and teens interested in the original source material, which I sought out. It was this poster that hung on the wall in my bedroom, depicting the original comic Turtles, and I made sure that copies of the original comics have a place on my bookshelf. It was a perfect storm of tie-ins with video games, cartoons, and movies that made the Ninja Turtles so successful. That, along with the timeless nature of the characters, outsider vigilantes that are never race-specific nor location-specific, that allows the franchise to be successful even today. I had a massive obsession with the Konami arcade game, which was a high-profile 4-player beat-em-up based on the cartoon that stayed in video arcades for decades due to its popularity, ushering in a whole era of licensed beat-em-up games, and even got its own arcade sequel, Turtles in Time, which would also become one of the best-selling games for the Super Nintendo gaming console. In fact, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was one of the first 1980s cartoons that had a high-profile video game presence. In addition to the arcade game, there was an infamously difficult Nintendo game that kept me going back to the rental store time and again to try and beat it. I won't lie, all of that is because of the original cartoon making me aware. Well, that and a certain commercial from Playmates Toys. Thanks so much for watching this video. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more, please remember to click subscribe. If you want to see more of our cartoon rants, click the links below. And if you want to see more RetroBlasting retro greatness, we have over 150 videos to choose from. You can visit our channel page. Thanks again, and we hope to see you on the next one.
Challenge.